Hey, Mike.
We got a show to do.
Oh, we do? Is it that time already?
Yeah, it's that time.
Okay.
It is time for Wake the Kids, Phone the Neighbors, a Letterman tribute podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Wake the Kids, Phone the Neighbors.
Hello. Welcome to Wake the Kids and Phone the Neighbors. This is a Letterman tribute podcast. My name is Mike.
I'm Rusty.
This is Rusty. And we are, I guess basically we're going to go over pretty much the entire career of David Letterman, right?
Eventually. I mean, it's a long way to go. It's a journey, if nothing else. But yeah, we're gonna start.
Yeah, that's cool. So, Rusty, we started talking about this podcast a little while back, and you and I had never really met before in person, and we got together and we talked about what we wanted to do, and then I get this email from you that has about 900 videos on it, which is great.
902, but yeah, you're close. You're close.
Yeah. I got to say, I am super, super impressed with the amount of research you've done here. And just in us talking earlier today, we were talking about even more that you've done since.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've done a lot. Yeah, I like to dive into things full head on. You know, I mean, if you're going to discuss something, it's better to be informed of what you're discussing. Yeah, definitely.
So if we're talking about David Letterman, we're going to start somewhere around 1968. Right?
1968. Yeah, I guess that would be the junior year of college. That would be Letterman's junior year.
So David Letterman, famously from Indiana.
Absolutely. Indianapolis,
Indiana.
Broad Ripple neighborhood.
Broad Ripple neighborhood.
Yep.
And went to Ball State.
Only because his grades weren't good enough to go anywhere else.
Is that right?
Absolutely. C student, average. Just an average guy.
Yeah, and you were telling me something about that that happens now.
Yeah, he has a scholarship foundation set up through Ball State University, which I think it's so on par for who David Letterman is as a person. But he has I'm not sure the exact name of it, but it's a scholarship for students who are C students.
That's fantastic.
Average. And generally what they ask for is some type of creativity, which, express their creativity through either a video or a recording or some kind, and then they submit that with their essay. And, it's on par for David Letterman.
Yeah.
He was an average guy. He was an average student.
He talks about that a lot throughout anything that he does is how average he is.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that was part of his appeal.
Yeah, he was just the everyday guy. He could have been your next door neighbor, cracking jokes on the fence line with you kind of thing.
Absolutely. So Letterman to me was everything when I was growing up. I had never really seen or heard anything like him, and it was the sarcasm and that was a weird way to say sarcasm, but it was the sarcasm and it was just the anything goes attitude of the show. And so when I first came across him, of course, it was Late Night with David Letterman. That was the first time I was ever exposed to him. Now, having said that, from some of this stuff that you've sent me, I think I had seen him before, because I don't know how you didn't. If you watched game shows, if you watched variety shows, if you watched anything like that, he just started kind of appearing.
Oh, absolutely. If you watched NBC at any point in the 3-year time span from the Comedy Store to his actual first appearance on Johnny Carson, it's I mean, all kinds of shows. He did a pilot for a game show, The Riddlers. That never actually made it. That was
a terrible show.
Wow, it was horrible.
It's a rough show.
Horrid.
Yeah. The Riddlers with your host David Letterman.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now, the first item going up for bid is this wonderful automatic garage door opener.
And then there was the weird, the Starland Vocal Band show, which was kind of hippie-esque, and it was kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a neat little variety show, I think.
The Starland
Starland Vocal Band.
Thinking of you, working up my appetite. Looking forward to a little afternoon delight.
Recognize that hit? Well, tonight the group that made it famous travels from Washington, D.C. to Malibu, California, giving concerts and performing with some of America's brightest comedians.
You guessed it, gang. Behind me, a crack production crew. It's a Sunday night. What do you got to do anyway? So, gentlemen, start your tape machines.
Do you know what year that was? The Starland Vocal Band show?
The Starland, yeah, that was the summer of '77.
Okay, so that's 77.
Yeah,
All right.
this is summer of 77.
let's take it back. I do want to talk about that show specifically.
Okay.
Just because when I watched it, I could not really believe what I was watching.
Yeah.
But it does really encapsulate that time period. You know, it's so weird to watch it now.
Afternoon Delight. Yeah. It's just that that feel to it. Absolutely.
Yeah, they had one song, and so they built a variety show around them. Okay, so let's talk about where the stuff that you sent me. And first things first, we got something called Uncle Gimpy. Uncle Gimpy's like 1968 Ball State Radio. It's a little rough, but you can certainly see where he's starting to develop. He was kind of the announcer on this show.
Absolutely, and not only did he announce, though, he did a lot of the creative writing on the behind the scenes things for that little bit. It was what I liked about it most was how nonsensical it is.
Yeah,
and it wasn't geared for college kids. It was actually a kids show. It was what it was targeted for. Which, if you listen to it, you wouldn't really think that it would be something that you would let your 8-year-old listen to at all. No. But it was entertaining, I guess. For somebody, because it wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have the archival footage if somebody didn't find it interesting.
The one that I listened to, they are introducing a Hawaiian model and singer. They keep talking about through the episode how this, and forgive me, I don't remember her name, but we'll play the clip. How she is coming, she's going to be on the show here in a little bit, the beautiful, whatever her name was. And then something horrible happens to her during the show, and she's disfigured, but she's still coming out. But they no longer call her the beautiful whoever.
Yeah,
and that's very much on brand as far as I'm concerned with David Letterman.
Oh, absolutely.
Promise, under deliver.
Under deliver, yeah. Under deliver.
Oh well, ladies and gentlemen, before we bring out the lovely Holly Loki, I'm going to sing a few Paraguayan pre-revolutionary field and ditch worker songs made popular here on campus.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt this radio transmission to bring you this pertinent burning bulletin on the condition of famous Hawaiian singer and dancer Miss Holly Loki. Miss Loki has just been mugged by a group of striking pineapple pickers. Doctors say her condition is grave. The report did not mention whether she will ever be able to play the accordion or the manzillo again. More on her condition after sign-off.
So you said something to me just a little bit before the show about listening to an interview with Letterman and Oprah. And this was, in the last couple of years, right?
Yeah, within the last 5 years or so, because, of course, he's only retired in 2015, so it's been, 6 years or so, 7 years. So,
which it feels like he's been gone forever.
Yeah, it feels like we never had a David Letterman almost, you know what I mean? The emptiness in that deal, but, there's 125 or so now, I think, late-night shows.
Yeah,
so
at least.
Yes. It's a different world,
and they all feel like they're paying homage to him at some point.
And I'm sure if you had conversations with the majority of them that are there, could probably and there's a few of them that I could specifically quote that they have attested a lot of their not only their successes, because a lot of them had started out maybe on Letterman's show doing a 6-minute bit or whatever it is.
Right.
So a lot of them, they It's definitely reminiscent of what he did. They all have a band. They all have, and some of them even do the Ed McMahon thing and the Andy Richter where they have a second guy with them on the show. So
that was always the thing with me with Letterman. I think it was that it wasn't Carson, right? So it wasn't the tried and true host sidekick band thing.
Absolutely.
It was just weird enough to where the band leader was really the sidekick, but the band was kind of odd. It was a little off. And then Letterman sitting behind that desk just always killed me. I mean, he never set up straight. He never interviewed the same way anybody else does. Yeah, he's always moving around.
Yeah, just moving around. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Animated.
It's nutty to think that somebody looked at this guy and went, "Yep, there it is. We need to build a show around this guy, a talk show."
Yeah, well, not only did they want to build a talk show around him, they literally did not know what to do with him, and they retained him for the purpose of his talent. They're like, "We know you're something.
Yeah,
we don't know what. We don't know where." And then they give him the awkward Daily Show thing. It's like they didn't know where to utilize him as far as like NBC's, Silverman. He didn't really know where to place the guy.
And what you've given me is kind of a great gift here to be able to watch through all this stuff. I'm like, it's crazy to me all the stuff they tried to make him fit into. If you're talking about either the game shows that he was on, or the weird daytime show that he was on, even some of the interviews that he did, he hosted the 1971 Indy 500 pit interviews.
Absolutely.
Which I understand coming from Indianapolis, that's a thing, but it was just so odd to see him kind of out of his element.
Well, you got to think the Indianapolis thing that you're discussing, that's pre-LA. So that's
true.
David Letterman in the sense that we know him. So in that
that's
early
even
stuff.
New York, right?
Yeah, it's way before New York, way before LA.
Yeah. Because this is
before
71.
Yeah, 71.
Good God, he's just out of college.
20 years old at this point.
Yeah.
So, it's really young. So, he started really young.
I didn't do anything impressive at 19 or 20. Not like that.
Mario Andretti.
Mario, what happened?
Well, obviously, there was some oil, I think, that was spilled by Kristolov's car, and when we arrived on the scene, John Cox spun in front of me, hit the wall, and ricocheted into my path, and I was trying to kind of pinch it down close so I won't get into him, but I had nothing I could do.
What about the traffic? The faster cars coming up with the slower ones now.
Well, that's normal pace of the race. I mean, this you see everywhere. That's no particular problem.
Thank you very much. Mario Andretti out of the 1971 Indianapolis 500.
Yeah. I can't even remember what I was. I was probably in a ditch hammered somewhere at 19.
That's about right.
So, I definitely wasn't standing on pit road with ABC Sports doing a expose.
I think I followed that same program. Okay, so we've got him on Ball State Radio. And then in 1969, a year after that, we have him on WAGO. This is also Ball State Radio.
Absolutely. So he started out, the radio station that he started was a 10-watt, real small. It was called WBST. That was the very, very first instance of him being on a college radio, and that's where I think the Uncle Gimpy show actually might have first aired. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's about where that around the same time frame, if not released on that radio show.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about it is he always wanted an outlet for his humor. He always wanted that outlet for his wit and stuff. So he actually got fired from his first radio station job by the radio manager. And again, the radio manager fired him, but because he didn't know what to do with him.
Right.
He knew there was some kind of untapped talent. And he was joking about Claire de Lune, the classical piece Claire de Lune, and he started talking about her sister, and I thought that was on brand for David Letterman. It was just the humor is just it's funny that even at that age, at 18, 19 years old, being in college, that while in college he's forming all of this humor and this wit, and he got to walk through his career in a way a lot of comedians didn't have an opportunity to, because he started out in broadcasting. He didn't start out doing anything humorous, intentionally humorous. None of his humor is intentional, but he wasn't intentionally humorous, and it was non sequiturs, and it was just the puns and the wit and everything. And it was interlaced through all of this early stuff. And would he be as funny if he didn't have that development phase? The world will never know. It's like trying to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop.
Yeah, I don't think so, man. I don't think it would have happened the same way. He has this weird advantage, I guess, of seeing all those 50s and 60s comics, like old school, like Milton Berle's and things like that.
Absolutely.
And then applying it to the 70s, and then finally kind of coming into his own in the 80s, And through all those times, again, we see things like Gong Show, something called Word Grabbers, which also
absolutely.
was a horrible show.
Awful show.
Here's your question. According to legend, why would you put a ring of garlic around your...
Come on, Dave.
All right.
No, Dave, no.
According to legend, why would you put a ring of garlic around your neck?
That's it. You got it. You won the game again. Congratulations.
You know, when you start getting a little further into his career, middle 70s, late 70s, you see that he was really floundering at that point, and the folks just didn't know what to do with this guy.
They really didn't, yeah.
But to his credit, he's the same guy on all these shows.
He's the same guy.
He never changes. Really.
And even if you look at his Mork and Mindy, because he did a guest appearance on Mork and Mindy.
Did he really?
Yeah, he did. That was one of the things I forgot to
I did
send
not
you.
know that.
Yeah, damned if I couldn't find a clip, though.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to find a clip to be able to send you once I get to the house. But
I'm having trouble understanding any of this.
Perhaps you can understand this. Sit down and shut up.
yeah, so he did the Mork and Mindy appearance, and
Mork and Mindy.
You know, just like you said, all the appearances on the game shows and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, how many comics really get an opportunity to be in 1,000 different places on network television to flex your craft or work on your craft?
You're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, it's.
What's crazy to me is that, you know, say flex his craft and work out his craft. He did it in front of everybody.
All the
You know,
time. He was always on,
Yeah, like you say, it's not like he did anything. You know, now comedians have a chance to go on a local podcast. They have a chance to work out stuff in local little clubs and things. He just kind of went all in.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. I watched a Kim Kardashian interview. It was on his new show.
I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry too. It was actually fairly interesting and insightful because David Letterman is able to now in his later years he's able to sit and talk for over an hour.
Is the one on Netflix?
Yeah, it's on Netflix.
Yeah.
My guest needs no next guest needs no introduction.
Yeah.
And they were discussing, you know, the climate of the world today as far as Instagram and things like that. And he was discussing. He said, "Yeah, I used to have 1 million people watch me at nighttime."
Right.
And he's like, "But that's nothing compared to what you do with social media."
It's
He said,
crazy.
You have
to think about
625 million people subscribed to Kim Kardashian, and he used to have 1 million. He was excited to have 1 million people watching him.
He was killing.
Yeah,
getting
absolutely.
1 million. Yeah.
400 million, you know, that's where he's at for net worth. So he made plenty of money.
Yeah,
during that
I'm
tenure.
not worried about the guy as far as being able to spend his money.
Oh yeah, he's there.
So if we go back to 1969 and we're talking about Muncie radio station WAGO, and this is Ball State Radio. Listening to this episode, there's one thing special about it. Tell me what happens in that episode that's so special.
Oh, the WAGO. So in that, it's a bit he does, and in the bit he uses his wife. Michelle was his first wife in that bit.
Yeah.
So we'll play a clip for you guys.
Doobie 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 doo. Doobie doobie. Certainly hope someone's home.
Hello?
Hello, who is this?
This is Lila Whip. Who's this?
Lila Whip, this must be your magic and enchanted evening, for this is Dave Letterman, fun seeker of the radio.
Wow.
Do you listen a lot, I'll bet? Huh, do you?
What station?
This is warm and wonderful WAGO. Do you live in the West Wing or anything?
No, I'm sorry. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, listen.
Radio?
Pardon me?
A radio station?
Yes, a radio station.
Sorry. No, I don't think I've ever heard of it.
Oh. Well, listen,
you should have called before. I've been asleep, and I've got to go to work at 3 at the Pixie.
At the Pixie?
Yes.
Hey, ho, at the Pixie! All right, Lila, this is your lucky night, sweetheart.
Hey, look.
Are you the all-night grill girl out there?
Yeah.
Whoa, a hot ticket on the phone, boy.
So in the clip, you could hear him talking to somebody named Michelle.
Right.
And that would be his first love interest.
She picks up the phone. She's asleep or whatever. He woke her up. And
Yeah,
then they
woke her
talk
up out of
about-
her sleep.
Yeah.
And so that's his first wife. That
Yeah.
was the woman that he ended up moving to LA with.
Yeah.
And
she's the one that encouraged him to
yeah,
move to
she
LA,
encouraged
right?
him. Yeah, she's the one that encouraged them to move to LA and him to pursue his career,
Yeah.
because at that point he had reached the pinnacle of Midwestern broadcasting. He was famous regionally. He was an Indiana broadcaster.
Weatherman.
Known weatherman.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, again, when we discuss his early career and how many places he was in and how many things he did. That's even here in his early career in the late 60s. So he does radio shows, like he's doing a radio show, he's doing a broadcast on TV, and then on TV he's the fill-in guy. So he's doing daily stuff in the morning shows, or he's doing an expose across town, or he's doing that, which we get small town news. I feel like from that's where he generates the small town news bit, is from that early.
I feel like that's a lot of his draw, or it was for me. That it feels like it's a small town guy on a big time radio, on a big time TV station, you know, that kind of thing, and you still that connection to us lowly folks out there watching, you know, through whether it's small town news or stupid pet tricks or anything like that. It feels like this is a guy we know. You know, and even when I watch some of this old stuff, I'm like, well, that could have been a buddy of mine who just got lucky, you know, and walked onto a game show set.
Absolutely. It's so average. His humor is average. I hate to, I mean, I don't want to say it, but it is. It's average guy's humor. Yeah. And that's what makes it so relatable. And I think that's where a lot of his success lied in, is the fact that the average steel mill worker watching David Letterman at night, you know, the jokes that he's dropping are the same jokes that the guys are cracking at the water cooler, you know what I mean? It's similar humor. It's dad humor, you know what I mean?
It is. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's all dad jokes and just quick-wittedness.
That's the funny thing in doing all this research, and I was looking for books and literature to read on him, and a lot of the books that you find are quote books that specifically say dad humor or inspirational wit or, you know, wit, dad, and those kind of words, you know, those buzzwords. And that's what he is, you know, he's just wit.
Well,
bad humor.
That's absolutely what drew me in as a kid. It was my first, like, and this is going to sound weird, but he was kind of my first comedy crush, right? Like,
absolutely.
Like, I can remember being a kid and having dreams of, like, oh, I'm walking into an elevator and holy crap, David Letterman's on the elevator and we start talking or whatever, you know, and that's the whole friggin' dream. That's all I wanted, you know, was just to meet him.
Just to meet David Letterman.
Just bar back and forth with him or whatever. And so I think that really speaks to me as I was a teenager, I guess, or a wannabe teenager at that time. I would have been about 12, 13. The show late night premiered in what, 80?
83 or 82. It was 82 or 83.
Somewhere.
It was like 2 or 3. It was like 2 years, I think, after the 80 morning show.
Oh, that's right. The morning show was 80.
Summer of 80.
Which I had never seen before until
I never even knew it existed.
Yeah, if it wasn't for YouTube, I never would have stumbled across it. So what I do these days, which is not that different from what I used to do, instead of watching video cassettes and recording everything, I just go to YouTube and look for stuff. And so when I go to bed, this is a little inside baseball, but whenever I go to bed, my wife will go to sleep and then I'll have the headphones on or whatever, and I'm just watching old clips of Letterman, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
And then as you watch that, the algorithm learns, oh, you want more Letterman stuff. And then it brought up that last episode of his daytime show.
Well, fun fact, a lot of what you find for David Letterman that is on YouTube is from a guy named Don Giller, who is actually a huge archivist, personal archivist. He has no affiliation with anything to do with Worldwide Pants or David Letterman. Yeah. And it was a personal project of his that he started, you know, when he was younger.
And if you don't know what Worldwide Pants is, it's Letterman's production company.
Worldwide Pants, the most trusted name in pants and entertainment.
Absolutely, yeah. Letterman's production company, which he started out actually in the 80s with that. It was something that, and he managed to maintain all the rights to all his stuff with that.
At the end of every show, Worldwide Pants, or it ultimately morphed into somebody just going, pants, and that was it.
That was it. Pants.
Yeah, pants.
Pants. Yeah.
Let's talk about some of this stuff that you sent. We talked about kind of the radio stuff, and then he up and moves to L.A. and starts kind of getting his stand-up career going.
Yeah, absolutely. So he moves to L.A. about 75. So all the game shows and stuff that comes after this.
But really quickly after that.
Oh, really quickly.
Yeah.
Within like a year or two
Yeah.
of him being there. He got there in 75, and by 76, he's got appearances in NBC shows, 76, 77.
Do you have any idea who his contemporaries were, like at the Comedy Store or wherever he was performing? Like, who were the people?
Absolutely. I was just about to get to that. Good thing you asked that question. Cool. So he was actually a writer for Jimmy Walker.
We didn't plan a lot of this, by the way.
Yeah, this is off the cuff.
Right.
This is off the cuff. But we're trying to keep it in the vein of what David Letterman here.
Absolutely.
No
preparation.
So Letterman, he actually became a writer for Jimmy Walker in the 70s through the Comedy Store.
Dynamite Jimmy Walker.
Dynamite, Dynamite Jimmy Walker. Yeah. So
hang on. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I don't mean to keep interrupting you.
No, you're good.
But I just saw yesterday a Medicare ad with
absolutely. I was going to mention that. Yeah, you beat me to it with the Dynamite, but I was going to mention that he's now so old he's aged out to commercials.
That's right. He says something like, if you want extra money on your Medicare check, it's Dynamite or something like that.
Absolutely.
It's just awful.
And then I asked about the benefit that adds money to my Social Security check. And get this, I'm entitled to an extra $100 a month. That's $1,200 a year added to my Social Security check. And I was like, Dynamite.
So at that time, you had other people around him that were also writers for Jimmy Walker at the time. So you had Jay Leno.
Oh,
actually, this is where he meets Jay Leno.
Wow.
You had Paul Mooney.
Oh yeah, I remember Paul Mooney.
You had Robert Schimmel, Andy Kaufman. When you think Andy Kaufman, I don't think anybody from my generation that knows who Andy Kaufman is thinks of Man in the Moon with Jim Carrey.
Right.
That's where that's where we get him at.
That's not at all.
And that's
not at all.
That's not at all.
Some of the greatest Andy Kaufman improvisations and appearances are on Letterman.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just throughout the years.
Oh, throughout the years.
We'll get to them.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I think we should just have a whole episode dedicated to Andy Kaufman. Yeah, I think we should because he had some really good appearances, some really great, starting with the 1980 morning show.
Yes.
So that's where he did. But
hi, and welcome back to the show. What am I doing at this point?
Introducing Andy Kaufman.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here's Andy Kaufman. This is awfully a very nice surprise. What brings you here?
Well, I'm in New York, and I've been sleeping in doorways to see what it's like, and a very fascinating. It's true. That's what I've been doing. I haven't been in a bed or anything for a few weeks now, and a very fascinating thing happened to me. As I was a few days ago, I was in this doorway, and I had needed a place to sleep, and I was chased out of one place. Like, I found an apartment. It was
dangerous doing this, huh?
Yeah, it's an apartment house staircase, and I was sleeping on it, and I was chased out of there by, I guess, the manager of the hotel or something. So I had to find a place to sleep, and I made a deal with myself that I would only stay on staircases and. Because I want to experience the. And so anyway, this fascinating thing.
I'm sorry, we really don't have time. Ed Newman is standing by this morning with our NBC News update. And Ed, are you there?
I'm here, Dave.
Okay.
So you had other guys. You had Louis Anderson, Elaine Boozler.
Elaine
Pronounced that wrong.
Yeah.
Elaine Boozler. Byron Allen, Jack Henley, Steve Odenkirk. And those were the
Steve or Bob.
No, Steve Odenkirk. He's the one that did. I don't know if you remember it in the early 2000s. There was a movie called Kung Pao Fist.
Oh man, I love that movie.
And that was him.
I love that movie.
He also did. That was for my generation. But Ace Ventura, he actually had a lot of hand in the Ace Ventura movies. He actually wrote and directed the second movie for Jim Carrey.
Crazy.
He was one of Jim Carrey's buddies from the Comedy Store. They were kind of buddied up.
Think about that list that you just gave. I mean, that is. Oh, and those people are all pretty much legends.
I don't even have enough paper to write. I mean, that's just a specific group that he wrote for Jimmy Walker with. At that time frame, you name it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? 70s comedians, name it. They were there.
Yeah.
Pryor, all of them.
And all of them built everything you saw in the 80s and 90s.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
And all the footwork starts late 60s, early 70s for
not
most
just
of them.
not just Letterman stuff. I mean, you're talking SNL, you're talking about whatever other comedy shows were on.
Comedy, period.
Just comedy in general.
I think that's where like the roots of what modern comedy is. And it comes, like you said earlier, you have TV taking off after World War II in the late 40s, early 50s is when they're starting to figure out what they're going to do with network television. Like they didn't even know. The TV executives didn't know what it was. It was all experimental. It was all
even
new
the people
and
in the
fresh.
audience didn't know. I mean,
nobody knew.
yeah.
You're just sitting there hoping you're going to get a good show.
That's right.
And then you have like the Steve Allen show and a lot of the antics and stuff and the quirky humor that he had.
And you and I have talked about that before, about all the influences that somebody like Steve Allen had on him. When you look back at some of that old Steve Allen stuff, it is almost verbatim what Letterman did later, as almost an homage or a whatever, or a continuation of his type of humor.
Yeah, no, even knowing Johnny Carson is one of his major influences, you look at Steve Allen and you can't, there's no way that you could argue that he did not get some of that stuff from him. And even in some of the interviews that I've listened to of Letterman, he's even stated, the teabag thing that Steve Allen did, where he covered himself in tea bags and jumped in a vat of hot water, which then Letterman would kind of do something reminiscent of that, with not only with the Velcro, but with the Alka-Seltzer suit.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about
and he
that,
jumped in the Alka-Seltzer suit.
During those SNL Letterman years, Al Franken was one of the funniest guys in the world.
Absolutely. And even, to me, even when he segued into politics, he made politics funny.
It's true.
And David Letterman even attributes Al Franken for the reason why now he's even interested in politics. He said that the only reason why ever, as a late guy, you're not really supposed to show your leanings left or right. That was historically, Johnny Carson made fun of both sides.
Sure.
And you have to keep your political affiliations reserved when you're making fun of everybody, because you don't want to make anybody mad, I guess. But so we're in the late 70s now.
Yeah. Just one more thing. Some of those Franken and Davis, nobody really remembers Davis as his partner.
Yeah, absolutely.
But those two guys, man, they were some of the best SNL writers. And then when they would appear, there was something with Letterman where he liked those comedy duos. Like he would have, I don't remember who the other guys' names are, but he would have a lot of comedy duos on.
Specifically a comedy duo. I can't remember their name, and it really bothers me that I don't know their name after doing all this research.
Is it Bob and
Bob and something? Yeah,
Bob and David, Bob and something like that. Yeah.
Bob and something. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
I'll have it for the next show.
We have an outstanding program. Bob and Ray are here tonight.
But he had them on his show multiple times, and he discusses their humor and stuff like that, and their jokes and everything.
That was the thing with him. Anybody that he had on multiple times, you knew he really liked them.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like,
because they had nothing to push.
Well, that's the same with like Andy Kaufman. Like, why would you continually have a guy like that on your show if nothing but for pure entertainment and the fact that you appreciate what he does?
Yeah, Kaufman had zero to push. I mean,
zero.
He would like come on, and Letterman would ask him, hey, what's going on? What do you got coming up? And he's like, nothing.
Never been one like him before him, and there will never be another like him after. There's nobody that will ever be able to nail that specific genre of humor that he had.
He was the meta guy.
Yeah, absolutely super meta.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, he invented meta as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so we're back at we were doing the radio stuff, and now he's moved to LA.
Okay.
And now we start getting some of those game show.
And with all these game shows and stuff, I imagine for David Letterman, it was probably a laugh riot. It was probably some of the funnest stuff he did. At least it appears that way to me. Like,
it does.
He seems like, I don't want to be here. This is not what I want to do with my life.
But that was everywhere he was.
That was everywhere.
It was
he went.
always, I don't want to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Even with the Tonight Show, he didn't want to be there. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So you started off with something called Word Grabbers, which it was
awful.
Just the stupidest concept where they would say a thing and then if you guess the word, you got to pass the thing on to the next person or whatever.
Yeah.
It was just silly. It was password, but like they didn't. It's almost like they didn't have any other versions of game shows. They couldn't come up with other versions of game shows, so they just took
recycled them.
Yeah,
it was like the $10,000 pyramid, the $20,000 pyramid, the $30,000, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, absolutely.
And then you went on to well, he was on the Gong Show, which the Gong Show was one of my favorites. And
that's not one that I'm familiar with.
Really, the Gong Show?
I wasn't. That was the first clip I'd ever seen of the Gong Show.
The Gong Show, man. If you ever wanted anything that made people feel uncomfortable, the Gong Show would do it for you.
We're lucky to have this man with us today because he really doesn't need this job. He sells 5-day deodorant pads as diapers for infant midgets. Ladies and gentlemen, David Letterman.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you so much. Thank you. Anna, boy, I am still limp from excitement, frankly, and okay, I'll handle this, Anna, if you don't mind. Now, I've given you a 6, almost too much entertainment. You know what I mean? Okay.
The Gong Show was, the setup for the Gong Show is it's a talent show, basically.
Okay.
And they would have 4, quote unquote, celebrities over on the side. And they were the judges for this talent show. And if they didn't like what somebody was doing, they'd hit the gong and they were gone.
Okay.
If they did like what they were doing, they'd let them continue. And then at the end, everybody would get judged and they'd have one big winner.
Isn't that kind of like the Apollo Theater?
Yeah,
you stand up. If you don't get the cheers, they drag you off the stage.
Yeah, it was kind of like that. But they would literally hit a gong in the middle of it and just drag them off stage. You know, see you, bye, you're done.
That's kind of humorous.
It was great.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be great.
And they tried to redo the Gong Show several times. But to see Letterman as a host, that's one of those that makes me think, oh, crap, I guess I did see Letterman before I actually saw Letterman.
Yeah, unrelated.
Because I watched every Gong Show episode.
Unrelated to this, Jay Leno's actually bringing back Groucho Marx's game show that he had in the 50s.
The Secret Word one?
I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
The very first one that he did.
Yeah, the one where the duck would drop from the ceiling with the word on it.
Yeah, so Jay Leno's actually supposed to start recording for that. Yeah.
Oh,
I thought that was pretty neat.
Cool. Yeah, I'm not the biggest Jay Leno fan in the world because I took sides. You know, I was like, I'm in Letterman camp. That's it. I don't want any more Leno.
I like his humor. He's funny, but as a person, no, I'm not a big fan at all.
Leno was extremely funny on Letterman.
Oh, he was hilarious.
Those headlines, you know, and stuff, and just talk about that kind of stuff. And it was fantastic. And then to see him transition into the host of the Tonight Show was just crazy to me.
Yeah, it was. And even David Letterman gives him his flowers. You know, he even says he's one of the funniest guys he's ever met in his life. He's one of the smartest. He's one of the most appealing. But again, with comedians, there's that insecurity that they all have inside of them, I feel
1,000%. So Gong Show, then we went to Word Grabbers, and then we had something called the Smart Alex. Now we're talking like 1977.
Yeah, we're in so between 77 really is like between 77 and 80 is where you get the largest concentration of his appearances is around those 3 years.
Somebody found him.
Somebody from NBC,
store.
absolutely.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, here's a guy we can use.
Well, they had guys on the ground in comedy shops probably all over the United States, I would imagine, at that time, especially New York and L.A., when that, like we just discussed, the comedy scene at that time it's the golden era of comedy as we know it. Like every major comedian that I watched growing up in the late 90s and early 2000s, all the movies from the 90s and even the movies in the 80s that we get that I watch were all of these comedians that come from these stores, these shops, these gatherings.
Yeah, and Letterman was always one of those guys who kind of talked about that process of sending somebody to watch these guys perform and stuff and then bringing them on. And it felt like a competition almost between Carson, Letterman, and then, of course, Leno after that, to get these guys on as fast as they could before the other guy got them.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, there was that level of competition, especially when you had David Letterman and Jay Leno singular when it was just them two. Because at first Johnny Carson ruled the stage.
Oh, absolutely.
Nobody had any kind of market share anywhere in that realm. and then now you have it divided, which NBC didn't want.
Well,
NBC did not want that.
It was either you watch Carson or you watch some news or you turn your TV off. I mean,
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
was really it.
Signing off, you know, you just you go to
you
bed.
get the American flag and
that's
you go to
it.
bed.
Yeah, you know, you stand up for the pledge and then you head to bed.
That's right. That's the way we did it in my house.
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, we talked about Gong Show, Word Grabbers, Smart Alecks, the Riddlers, which are all just awful game shows.
Well, since we're that far, we're through the game shows. Not a lot of people know that he did a screen test actually for Airplane.
Did he really?
He did in 1980 before the show started in the summer. It was January of 80, I believe. He actually screen tested for Airplane. And he was screen testing for the main character, the
he
main
would have been
guy for
so
Airplane.
good in Airplane.
Oh, he would have been hilarious. And I think it might have, like, it's crazy to think what would have happened if he went of like on that trajectory. Would he went a Hollywood trajectory for that? I wonder.
think he would have been a movie guy.
I wonder.
Huh. I did not know that. That's fantastic.
I wonder if there's. I'm gonna have to see if I can.
That just
dig
blew
that
my
up.
mind.
I wonder if there is a screen test. I wonder if there's any footage of that. I'm gonna call NBC tomorrow.
I'd love to see. I'm gonna call NBC
calling
tomorrow.
NBC. Call NBC.
I've not seen this. I'm not eager to see this.
We'll have fun.
Ted, we got a telegram this morning from headquarters.
Headquarters? What is it?
It's a big building where the officers meet. But that's not important right now. You're taking all the blame for what happened on that raid was a pretty courageous thing to do.
Was it? Because of my mistake, 6 men didn't come back from that raid.
7. Lieutenant Zip died this morning. But Dr. Chandler says you'll be out in a week. Isn't that wonderful?
Wish I could say the same thing for George Zip.
Ted, be patient. No one expects you to get over this immediately. I found a wonderful little apartment for us. It has a brick fireplace and a cute little bedroom with mirrors on the ceiling. What's wrong with him?
It's Lieutenant Hurwitz, severe shell shock. He thinks he's Ethel Merman.
You'll be swell. You'll be great. Gonna have the whole world.
So the next thing on this list are the next 3 or 4 things. You know, I thought the game shows were rough, but then you start getting into something called Celebrity Cooks, which I had never seen the guy who hosts
CBC.
this. Oh, is that what it was?
CBC.
It was Canadian?
Yeah, it was a Canadian broadcasting.
Never mind, then
Canadian.
it makes total sense.
It does make total sense. Absolutely.
Canada's such a weird place.
It is. Well, not only is Canada a weird place, but the Canadian broadcasting.
It is.
It was Northern humor. It was their humor. You know, so it's singular to Canada, I feel like.
The whole setup to this show was they've got this guy, this little short guy, who I guess is a cook. I don't know exactly what he was.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. The host, I'm not sure if he was a cook or not. I don't even know what his name was. Yeah, I didn't really know what his name was either. It was a really odd, peculiar thing I feel like for Letterman to participate in. I couldn't even find really information about how he got to that point to where he was on CBC in Canada doing a cooking show.
It just felt like somebody went, okay, we've got 14 appearances. How many do you want to send him on? And this was one of them that they chose. And I don't know why they did, because it's not like Letterman had gone, you know, I really want to be a cooking guy, or I want to be a chef or whatever. And so he goes on this thing, which the set kind of looks like you're inside this guy's house. And Letterman makes pasta, green pasta, and it ends up being terrible, and they end up spitting it all out and all this stuff. But it's so off-brand for him to be the guy who's doing the things and not the guy to host the thing.
Got everything you need there?
Yeah,
Dave?
we got everything. We have everything.
Want a little taste of wine?
No, maybe a little later.
A little later?
Yeah, go
okay,
ahead.
I'll put mine aside.
Well, no, go ahead.
No,
Go ahead and get sloppy drunk if you want
not
to.
me, pal.
Make a fool of yourself. Go
No,
ahead.
not a bit. No, I'll just let it sit. Well, I might have just a taste. You don't know what you're missing.
Yeah.
All right, what are you going to cook?
Today, I was, of course, first of all, I guess you folks read in the paper, I was going to prepare cream of monkey soup, but the...
Oh, they want me to slip this up a little higher. Excuse me, Dave. Just... There you go.
Mm-hmm. But the price of monkey being what it is, I've decided on something else. And today, fettuccine verde. Now, how many of you know what fettuccine means? Nobody here knows. It means bowling. And verde means green, Bowling Green. You familiar with the city of Bowling Green in Kentucky? Fettuccine Verde is a small town in the Alps of Italy. And honestly, this is back in 1610 where Leonardo da Vinci first drew up the plans for the first practical automatic bowling ball return.
And even with some of the game shows, like he's not hosting it, he's there, and that really allows him, I feel like again, to flex, like to be able to show off them talents. He's not got the pressure of standing there and running the show, which his show he never had to really. I don't feel like his show had its own legs, kind of like Johnny Carson's. Once the monologue's done, the show walks.
Yeah, pretty much.
And David Letterman always said that he had to work at it, but you don't feel that. You feel the same Johnny Carson feel, like Johnny Carson, pretty much as soon as he sat down, it was over. His job was done.
But you don't think anything about the fact that Letterman took the cards and he would throw them through the window and the glass break sound and all that stuff. You don't think anything about it, but somebody had to come up with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I mean, because nobody was doing it before that.
No, nobody was doing it. And then even if you look at the early show, the early show, the David Letterman,
show.
The show in the morning, he had little buzzers and stuff underneath the desk to hit to just little.
He loves his props.
Sounds and props and things like that really propped it up.
One of my favorites that I see now as I watch these just non-associated clips on YouTube is the time that he had the water fountain in front of his desk. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that one.
So it's like if you go to Las Vegas, they've got those dancing fountains. The water fountain things.
The Bellagio fountain or whatever it is.
And so he had a little one of those in front of his desk he would just turn on every once in a while, and the waters would just start dancing and stuff.
That's definitely that's on brand again for David Letterman.
Very much so.
Absolutely.
So we also see him show up on Don Kirshner's rock concert, which I think was a precursor for, what they call that show? Midnight Special.
They think one of the causes of crime in this country is now game shows. That's right, because people watch them, and they get real greedy, and then they go out and commit crime. I think that could be true. About a month ago, I was in my bank. A guy runs in, holds it up, takes about 10 hostages, locks them in the vault. Then he said, "All right, cops, listen up. I got 10 people in here. I'm going to read you a list of my demands. Play it safe, and nobody gets hurt. First of all, I want a $50 gift certificate from the Spiegel Catalog Company. Spiegel, featuring over 50,000 quality gift items."
So there used to be a show on called Midnight Special, and it was hosted by Wolfman Jack, if you remember him at all. He was a radio DJ, I believe, out of L.A., who became slightly famous for a while. And he would host this show where they would bring on bands and they'd have rock, like a little rock concert for about an hour or whatever. And I believe Don Kirshner was involved in that. But anyway, those are the same type shows. And you see this one, the one that you sent me is from 1977. It's Letterman just doing his stand-up again. And we talked about how it's funny from watching these clips. I saw the same stand-up from Letterman probably 4 times. Same material, everything. You just see him trying to work it out, working on his material and getting there.
It's like a knife. You could see that it started out dull. I mean, it was witty, but it was dull. Like listening to the early radio broadcast from Ball State. And then you could literally see it on the grindstone, sharpening and sharpening and sharpening with every appearance. And like I said, it was concentrated in the late 70s where you start to see all these appearances. But like you said, you could see the compounding of how he starts off, it's weak and it just gets strong, and his joke just gets to where it's just solid. And that was one of the things for when he had his first appearance on Johnny. He was super nervous about being on Johnny Carson, which I can imagine anybody would be.
Oh, yeah. It was the biggest show on the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. So he had practiced it so much that he overcame the nerves. So he was super nervous through the whole bit, but he knew he had practiced it so much that it was a flawless delivery kind of thing.
Right.
And that's what's great about him, I feel like, was that early work ethic to do nothing for the rest of your career.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Yeah.
He literally grinded from 19 to 31-ish. I think it was around 31, 32 when he got the show on NBC.
And he got it right and kind of coasted.
And that was it. And he put it in low
even the
one and
CBS
coasted the whole
show
way
is the
through.
same show. I mean, Absolutely. It's the same show. But
the morning show what was neat about it was a lot of the early stuff that you see, like I said, with Stupid Pet Tricks and with all of that all started with the daytime show.
Yeah, so let's talk about that daytime show in just a second. I want to get to one thing before we talk about that.
Yeah, sure. What you got?
One of these things that's kind of in the middle of all this stuff is something called the Starland Vocal Band Show.
The Starland Vocal Band Show.
Yeah. That is the weirdest friggin' thing I've ever watched in my life. It is an odd show that seems very forced. Based on a rock, quote unquote, light rock group that produced one song, basically. They're known for that one song, which is Afternoon Delight.
Yeah, that's it.
The Starland Vocal Band.
Thinking of you, working up my appetite. Looking forward to a little afternoon delight.
Recognize that hit? Well, tonight the group that made it famous travels from Washington, D.C. to Malibu, California, giving concerts and performing with some of America's brightest comedians.
That's the only song they're known for.
That's it. And then the show basically is them getting into like a Good Times van and traveling from place to place, singing to people. In the meantime, Letterman will show up and make a joke.
Yeah, it's awkward as shit. The show is super awkward.
So awkward.
It's literally one of the most awkward things I think I've watched from that era of TV, which there's a lot of awkwardness in TV.
There is a lot of awkwardness in the late 70s.
In the late
80s.
70s and the 80s. Because again, they had the golden era. You got to think at that time in the 70s and 80s, the golden era of TV is over. The 50s, 60s is over. So they're reinventing television at this time and trying to figure out, well, what do we do next with network television?
To me, it felt like the transition from old SNL to new cast almost, but in TV, in overall TV. Like you had this great show with these great people and they all went on to become stars and stuff. And then you replace the entire cast with a bunch of people that nobody knew. And so this new TV, like Starland Vocal Band, Peeping Time, and even the Mary Tyler Moore variety show, it's just so weird and uncomfortable.
Dead skunk in the middle of the road. Dead skunk in the middle of the road. Dead skunk in the middle of the road. Stinking to high heaven.
Excuse me, Mary.
Should I look left?
Fellas, could you knock it off? Hold it, guys. Hold it. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, our announcer, David Letterman.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, you're beautiful. Thank you so much. Oh, wonderful.
What are you doing out here?
I was just about to ask you the same thing.
Well, I was trying to open the show.
With dead skunks in the middle of the road?
Yeah, Stinking to High Heaven. It's a real song, David. I thought it would be a cute way to open.
You think dead skunks are cute?
Well, yeah, in the middle of the road.
Listen, you want to do something that's cute and entertaining to open the show with. Answer questions from the audience.
Questions from the audience? Oh,
It's
come on.
surefire, it can't miss.
I can't do it.
Why not?
Because Carol Burnett did it.
Yeah, right. Poor Carol. It hardly worked for her. She was only on the air 11 big years.
I know, but see, I'm not always that quick with jokes. I mean, I can't be funny all the time.
Well, so you don't have to be funny, just be honest. They'll ask you real easy questions like, what's your favorite color?
Yeah, well, see, I like a lot of colors.
All right, that's a toughie, but you'll be able to handle questions. You'll be able to handle questions like, where are you from, how you got started in show business, do you still stay in touch with Maury Amsterdam?
Yeah, I think I could handle that.
It is there. It seems so strained. Like the NBC had all this money from, of course, the Johnny Carson show at this time. The amount of money it was somewhere in the $50 million range a year, and you got to think that's in the 70s,
which now is quadrupled at
probably
the very least.
I think the numbers I looked at was like 200 million would be the inflation. And it's just insane to think that the amount of money that one show generated allowed for them to explore all these weird variety shows that you had, and and it's just a lack of what to do. They didn't, they had all this time to fill, but they had nothing to fill it with. And back to the Mary Tyler Moore show, it was called Mary was the name of the variety show, and that really is where Johnny Carson sees Letterman. So that's where they first, like Johnny Carson makes his first connection to Letterman was watching him on that variety show, and that is what leads to his first appearance.
So
with Johnny Carson.
Mary Tyler Moore is one of those that Letterman has also always had a huge fondness for.
A lot of interviews, yeah. He's had her on his show.
They've always gotten along really, really well, and he's credited her with really kind of jump-starting his career.
Yeah, and a lot of the interviews, again, that I've listened to, he mentions Mary Tyler Moore as a launching point.
And I think it has to do with both of them being from the Midwest and both of them having the kind of the same sensibilities, kind of the same, when you think about it, kind of the same style. Almost. Mary Tyler Moore was always one of those people that you got way more out of her than you thought you would. You know, she was good at interviews. She was good at stuff like that. She was just more put together than Letterman. But they had that same kind of Midwest, sense of humor, those dad jokes, all of that kind of stuff. So that was definitely something that got him going. Between then, there was something called Peeping Times. Peeping Times. And that, it felt like somebody didn't know whether to put news or comedy on TV at that time. Like, it was Letterman and another guy hosting this thing. And when you watch the beginning, they tell you everything that's going to be in the show. And then they have them kind of sitting at this counterpoint kind of thing where they're both in chairs and they talk to each other, but they don't look at each other. And there's a big green screen behind them, which is showing all these clips and stuff. It was awful also.
America was founded by immigrants. We are the so-called melting pot of the world.
And most of those immigrants entered this nation legally. Today, however, illegal aliens are a great and continuing problem. On this subject, we filed this report.
There are 77 checkpoints along the border. This is one of them, the Mexican border. Thousands of illegal aliens come to the United States every year. How do they do it? What precautions are taken? We talked to Border Patrolman James W. Hansen from Checkpoint 54. Officer Hansen, how long have you been patrolling this border?
Oh, I'd say 10, 12 years.
You enjoy this sort of work?
Yes, I do, Dan. Very much. I feel we're doing something important here, and I can honestly say I think we're doing our best.
Well, how do you explain so many aliens crossing the border illegally every year?
Well, I don't know, Dan. I'm completely dumbfounded. I know that Larry and I do our job very thoroughly here at this checkpoint.
Well, there must be various methods that aliens use. What do you do specifically to make...
Yeah, it was awful, but there was a lot of iconic people that were involved in that too. Barry Levinson was a part of that, and Barry Levinson. Yeah, wow. Barry Levinson is Academy Award-winning director.
Yeah.
Rain Man was what he's most known for, and he was actually a part of the Peeping Times thing. And it's really cool to see all of these things that he did and all these appearances that he had and all of the people that were around him at that time.
The other
blows my mind.
We're talking about that kind of that change from one kind of group to another group. It also in all of these clips you can feel it kind of changing from the 70s to the 80s. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
With the humor and stuff, you see very much this 70s influence, but then it kind of starts going away and goes more towards what we're used to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it segues into like modern humor. You know what I mean? As far as modern comedy is developed, it's definitely different than the 50s and 60s. You know, it's 50s and 60s. You know, everybody could sit in front of the TV and watch it.
Yeah, sure.
You know, me, you, mom, dad, everybody. The dog, cat. It was appropriate for all audiences. Yeah. And
the cat's the one that always gripes.
Yeah, cat, always the cat. Yeah, it's always the cat. But at this time in the 70s and 80s and stuff like that, it's just a reinventing of everything that had to do with TV, and it was just all these comics had all these influences from Jack Benny and Jim Parr and all these guys, and it all starts with Jack Parr. Sorry,
Jack Parr,
not Jim Parr. Jack Parr.
Right.
And
I'm sure there was a Jim Parr.
Yeah, I'm sure there's somewhere in the world.
Jim Parr Chevrolet.
Yeah, there you go. That's probably Jim Hoffpair. Yeah. So yeah, it's what I know as humor is where this comes from, where David Letterman, begins his career.
There's a couple other things that you sent me, which are also as weird. He was on a game show called Decisions, 78, 79.
Listen carefully now. On this question, our research source is the University of Southern California's Department of Biological Sciences.
Oh, yeah.
Now, which one of these animals is more sexually active in the reproduction of offspring or children? Let's take a look at our choices. We have up there a mink, a rabbit, a hummingbird, an elephant, a termite, and a praying mantis. Now, Madeline, what are you laughing at, Madeline?
I was just thinking that mantis praying, you know.
Yeah, and we know what he's praying for, don't we, Madeline? Okay, now, Madeline, you're going to have to use your intuition and your knowledge to decide which two of these 6 choices you're going to present to David. Now, make it as easy for David as you can, because David's then going to make a decision. Okay. What do you say, Madeline?
Yeah, well, let's bring down the rabbit.
Let's bring down the rabbit. We will do that. You'll be picking another one while the rabbit's on his way down.
Yeah, and then we'll take the elephant.
Boy, you certainly got both ends of the pole there, Madeline. We have the rabbit on one hand and the elephant standing on my foot. David, the choice is yours. I'll restate it. Which one of these animals is more sexually active in the reproduction of little ones or big ones?
Let's see. Those are fine choices, by the way, Madeline. Let's see, an elephant. I think an elephant is you have to rent all that equipment and so forth. Get yourself a forklift.
True.
It needs a rotor.
It's we're looking for the most prolific.
The most prolific, yeah, the one with the most active.
I would think of the two, it would have to be the rabbit.
I certainly would think that, but I've always been told. But for all I know, I've always heard there'd been an old hare's tail or something. You chose rabbit, going for point number 1. Between the rabbit and the elephant, which one is the more sexually active? Certainly the rabbit, and you got a point. That's the idea. Okay, Madeline, you're rolling now. Keep trying to make the choices easy. Rabbit stays. Pick another one, Madeline.
There's a piece of stand-up you sent me again. That stand-up is basically the same jokes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there's probably what is the weirdest thing on this list is David Letterman hosting Us Magazine's Look at the 70s.
Absolutely. He was a hot item in 1980. At this point, David Letterman's done all of the appearances that he's done, and historically, he's the guy that raises his hand for any job.
If anything shows you that they didn't know what to do with him, this is the antithesis of that.
Oh, yeah. Pinnacle, peak, all of that.
Because he is not the guy for this show.
No, and there's no, like, if you watch it, there's no humor. It's
no, he had to talk about like Anwar Sadat and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wholly scripted. Yeah, he's reading a script. He's definitely reading a script from whoever gave him that job. It's reading a script.
It felt like David Letterman hosts 60 Minutes. Or
That's
something like that.
Absolutely what it felt like. Yeah, David Letterman on 60 Minutes.
Weirdest thing I've ever seen.
It was so odd.
Us in the 70s. The Census Bureau counted nearly 208 million of us at the beginning of the decade. What were we like? Who made us smile? What villains did we boo? What heroes did we cheer? And who made us just plain stare?
But without that, he wouldn't have gotten the morning show. And so let's transition to that and talk about this morning show. Do you know how many episodes there were?
I don't know exactly how many episodes were, but I can tell you it was only for a summer.
Right.
They only lasted for one summer.
Yeah.
And it was the summer of 80.
Right.
Summer of 1980.
So 1980.
Well, before the show, we have to talk about how he gets the show.
Okay,
so 77, 78, Comedy Store.
Yeah.
Around 78 is when he made his Johnny Carson appearance.
Gotcha.
And at that time, the Johnny Carson show.
Think about that. That's probably like Robin Williams. It's probably area.
That's Robin Williams. That's Louis Anderson. That's Drew Carey.
Yeah.
I mean, they were all around this time in the late 70s. Yeah. So he goes on the Johnny Carson show. Nervous. Practices set 1,000 times in the mirror.
Yeah.
Goes in.
Nails it.
Kills it.
Yeah.
You could hear in the clip Johnny Carson in the background, he hawing like a donkey.
Yeah, you hear him.
You think he's going to kick the desk at any minute. Like,
yeah.
you know, it's just, you could hear him really like, and not just laughter to appease somebody.
No, this is
really
genuine laughter.
From
Yes.
here and up. And there was a joke that David Letterman about rolling a joint with a pamper.
Yes.
And the second he sits down with Carson, that's the first thing he says. Oh, that
That's
was
right.
a good one.
That's
That
right.
was a good one. And he said, oh, that's fresh. That's new. That's hip.
Even though if we go through this list, we've seen that same joke like 9 times.
Yeah, we've seen that same joke. We've seen bits and pieces of that particular bit. And I really think how he introduced himself was hilarious. He goes to the crowd and he goes, well, who's been here before? Well, who's been here with somebody who's been here before?
Going,
and he goes on. And that was like, oh, it was hilarious how he sets himself up. And then
that's that uncomfortable.
That's the uncomfortable thing.
My next guest is a young performer, a comedian who was a regular on the recent Mary Tyler Moore variety series. He appears regularly here in town at the Comedy Store, and will be hosting the Rose Bowl Parade for television on the 1st of January. Would you welcome, please, David Letterman. David?
Thank you. How many of you folks here have never been to a TV studio before? Applaud if you've never been to one of these places. Okay. How many of you have been here before? Applaud if you have been here before. All right, now, how many of you who have never been here before today are here with somebody who has been here before? Applaud. Okay, now, listen carefully. This gets a little confusing at this point. How many of you out of that last group are in this country illegally? Could we just hear? Great, fine. Looking for yard work, I'll bet. Well, nice to have you here.
And then you see literally the shining moment, the glory moment, the pinnacle of David Letterman's early career is he gets the nod.
Yes.
Come have a seat.
Yeah. So for anybody who doesn't know, and we're talking to everyone at this point, it feels like when you talk about this stuff now that nobody understands what the hell you're
Probably
talking
not.
about. Yeah.
This is targeted for 50s and 60-year-olds.
That's right.
Yeah, we'll be releasing this in a nursing home near you soon.
Enjoy this, children.
We're recording live from a geriatric center.
That's right. So at the time, again, like you said, Johnny Carson was the biggest thing in the world. Right, he was the guy.
He was it for TV for sure.
He was basically the guy who made the decisions on who was going to be a national comic and who wasn't, because his guys would go to the Comedy Store and they'd go to wherever else and watch these comedians. They'd invite them back, and then basically what you got to do is you would do like a 2-minute set or whatever on Carson or on the Tonight Show, and then if Johnny really liked you, he had the ability or the option to just go, hey, come on over and sit down and let's talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you got invited over, it was a huge deal.
Yeah, it's like you kill your set. The teacher gives you an A. He gives you the nod. You hear him hee-hawing like a donkey in the background.
Yep.
And then he waves you over to sit down.
Yeah.
That's like 15 extra credit points.
Yeah, it's basically... It felt very much like the movie Gladiator, with the emperor with the thumbs up, thumbs down kind of thing.
Yeah,
that's really what it was,
and it literally could make or break your career. Being on, if you killed, man, you'd had phone calls all day, every day from there from the next day on, and you're set. Like you're gonna make your stamp.
Yeah.
But if you didn't get the nod, you might as well call it career over.
Byron Allen, I think it was that I'm thinking of. He said something about being on Carson several times and then finally getting that nod, like on the 5th or 6th time he was there, something like that. I mean, there were guys who kept plodding away and finally got invited over. But Letterman and a select few
got the initial nod.
Just the
they
first
get the
time
nod.
you did it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And
again, I think it goes back to that Midwestern kind of the way they got along, their sense of humor, all of that stuff.
Yeah, being Midwest. And it's really funny that a lot of the broadcasting that, like the strength in broadcasting where you get all of these humorous broadcasters and stuff is really in that Midwestern area.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's like
really
a comedy
crazy.
belt
Yeah,
almost, or whatever.
Yeah, a belt or a pit, whatever you want to call it.
I feel like now everybody comes from either California or New York, but at that time we as a country drew from the middle of the country as far as comedy goes. Yeah,
and I think that
and
has
it's because
to do
everybody
with
got it.
Yeah, everybody got it, and I think when you pull somebody from Middle America like that, especially in that time frame, is where you get the cul-de-sacs of the 50s and the 60s, and when you start getting the suburban lifestyle. Because before then, everybody was, more. It was a more rural country at that time. You didn't have a national highway system at that time.
Right.
You didn't have any of these things. You had dirt roads pretty much in a lot of places with 2-lane highways everywhere. And the Midwest was where broadcasting really begins.
Yeah. And I think it has a lot to do also that transition we were talking about between the 70s and 80s, I think has a lot to do with Vietnam and Nixon and all of the stuff that went on then, and how the people in the middle of the country felt about things rather than how they felt about it on either coast.
Yeah, and it was interesting to hear David Letterman's perspective on that kind of stuff, because David Letterman himself was he said where they were fairly isolated from the unrest and everything, and I thought that was fairly interesting, because you would think that being there in Indiana, it would be a hotbed for that, but he said in Muncie, Indiana, he said that he vaguely knew of the stuff that was going on politically,
right,
and he said that the Vietnam War became real to him whenever he had a buddy get drafted and went over there, and then boom, like gone, like that kind of thing, and that happened to a lot of people, I'm sure. And
you can feel the way that
he never avoided, though.
No,
yeah, he never tried to dodge anything. He got lucky at the time is when they removed the draft and they went to the national lottery.
Right.
And for those that don't know that, during Vietnam War, they had a national draft where you were drafted, and that was it.
It was old school.
Yeah, old school draft style.
You get a letter in the mail, or somebody shows up at your house, or whatever. Yeah,
that's it. And they changed that. I can't remember what president was that actually changed it, but they changed it to a national lottery, which ended up putting.
I want to say LBJ, but I'm not 100% sure.
No, it wasn't LBJ. It was whoever was after LBJ, I think, that did it. But or before LBJ. Well, it doesn't matter. Whatever president did
whatever.
it. So
this is not what this is about.
Yeah, not at all. So David Letterman had, like I said, he never avoided anything.
Yeah.
And he got lucky and didn't end up getting drafted.
Didn't win the lottery.
Didn't win the lottery, and whenever they
won the laugh lottery instead.
Yeah, he was number 366.
Wow.
And that was his number in the lottery out of 390, I think it was. So he was never going pretty much.
Crazy.
So that was when he was able to have a sigh of relief.
So let's move to this daytime show.
Okay, so you've got the 3 years of Carson appearances around this time. 78 is when he gets his first appearance.
Still working on his stand-up, all of that stuff.
Comedy Store.
Sure.
Still working the Comedy Store. At this point in the Comedy Store, he's more of a, he's a celebrity figure walking around. You get your Johnny Carson nod, and you get to sit down in the chair, and you get to comfortably, he didn't look uncomfortable. That's the thing that you would think your first time sitting down with what at that time would be the greatest guy in TV, and there was no uncomfortable. David Letterman was just so David Letterman with him.
You feel like that during that time, the lead up to the show is where he made a lot of his connections, like with additional comics and just people in the industry and stuff like that.
Yeah, between the show and the Comedy Store, absolutely. That's where he gets a lot of what you'll see on his shows. He gets a lot of the people that come on his shows later on are definitely people that he started out with in his early career.
And the Comedy Store is the one that's owned by what's his name's mom.
Pauly Shore's mom.
Yeah, it was owned by Pauly Shore's mom.
Absolutely,
right?
I believe
she's passed.
I believe
since,
that. Yeah, I believe that's the store, the Comedy Store.
Yeah, that's the world famous Comedy Store.
Imagine having a son that unfunny and owning a Comedy Store.
Can you even imagine?
Yeah.
You think you got disappointment in your kids?
Absolutely.
What if your kid was Pauly Shore?
What if your kid was Pauly Shore? Yeah, absolutely.
And you owned a comedy club. That's crazy.
Yeah. To own the comedy club and have a son that unfunny has to be one of the most embarrassing things in the world. Yeah.
No offense to anybody who likes Pauly Shore, but you're an idiot.
No, complete offense. Complete offense. I want you to take offense to that. Absolutely. I want an email. I want an email that says you're offended by that.
Pauly Shore was an idiot.
Yeah, he was. Garbage.
That thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Quit it.
Yeah, not even funny.
So when I look at any of the reruns listen to me. I'm 100 years old. When I look at any of the videos of that daytime show that he had, it is literally the same template as Late Night with David Letterman. It just happens in the morning.
Yeah, it'll end up being pretty much the exact same format where you get the at the beginning where before the camera pans onto David Letterman, you get the non sequitur, introducing the world's smartest whatever you've watched so there's thousands of them.
But even like the transitions in commercials and stuff, they still had like it wasn't Photoshop back then, but it was the Photoshopped images or the weird
the little
whatever.
splashes. And if you go back, and I really think it's awesome because I was watching a lot of Johnny Carson and doing this research too, and he had the same thing where he had the really odd splash screens or whatever in between, like more to come,
did he really?
more to come thing like that.
See, I don't remember that, but
you could literally make a fortune just off of T-shirts if you took these little
just
things
took those screens
and you put them on a T-shirt and sold it. You'd make a fortune.
You're
They're
welcome,
just
public.
So awesome! Like some of the graphics and stuff that they use for those transitions are insane. But yeah, back to that. So with David Letterman, a lot of the things that you get from the morning show is where he would eventually put his foundations.
Sure.
That is the foundation.
You had an extended basic talk show set.
Yeah.
Where you've got a desk, you got a guy sitting behind it, you got a couple of chairs next to him. The thing that always catches me weird is that the guest comes out from the wrong side. So like when you're looking at it on TV,
the guest comes from the other side instead of coming this way.
If you're looking at him on TV, the guest would come out from the right side, which we're used to.
Johnny
everybody
Carson
coming out
show,
from
everybody
the
comes
left.
on your left.
Well, Carson. Well, I guess it would be Carson's left.
Yeah,
but if you're
Carson's
watching it would come out from the right also.
Yeah, from the right.
But what I'm talking about is any Letterman show past that was everybody would come out from
the opposite side of the desk.
Right.
Yeah, instead of coming out from the far side of the desk, they were coming out on the near side.
Yeah. And so it always throws me because I have to do a double take when I see that morning show because I think it's late night, honestly. But when they come out from the weird side, and then when I see the band leader who is not Paul Schaefer,
yeah, absolutely,
that's when it gets me. And the other thing that struck me as watching this daytime stuff is it's the exact same jokes, right? Same setups, everything, but that crowd just doesn't get it. That crowd is not the same crowd at all.
No, it's not the same crowd. And I feel like this crowd of people here was, it's less of people who want to be there and people filling the room. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like later on in the career, obviously, there's people who choose to be at his shows, people who fight to get tickets, sit in lines for years.
They didn't make it into the Price is Right, and so this was also available.
Yeah, this is also available. Yeah, they had like, okay, well, here's a list of, shit we're doing today. What do you want to be a part of? This, or this?
This one's full, this one's full, this one's full. How about the David Letterman show?
Well, shit, just put me in the David Letterman show.
Yeah. It was so it's really odd to watch that. And then I don't know when the transition happened, but do you remember the original band leader's name?
The original band leader's name? Yeah, the original band leader was he actually started out at the Apollo.
Okay.
His name was Frank Owens.
There we go.
Was his name Frank Owens.
So Frank Owens and his orchestra or whatever they called
orchestra. It was called Frank Owens, and I think they called it the Symphony Orchestra or something along those lines.
Something like that.
It's the last David Letterman Show live with Edwin Newman with the NBC News and Frank Owens of the David Letterman Symphony Orchestra. Plus, David's guests, the David Letterman Show family of the air, including writers, crew, and staff, singer Harv Mann, and the chorus line from the Rainbow Grill production of Kicks, and letters from viewers.
Once you get through the show and you start, realizing that it doesn't work for the time slot they were in and the ratings are just terrible, they get ready to decide whether they're going to cancel it or not. Well, they cancel it, and for 3 weeks after that, David is just like, boom, I'm going to do whatever I want.
Yeah.
He said, this is where I get to stretch and really... They've canceled me, so what can I do? What else can I do to get canceled?
The weird, as again, showing that they didn't know what to do with him. In the middle of this morning show, think about, and this is for people listening, think about watching Late Night with David Letterman, but they stop it dead ass in the middle and go, here's Edward R. Murrow to read the news or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, Ed Newman. Yeah, they used Ed Newman of NBC to do the news.
It was just so weird. Like, and it was straight up news.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, it was like depressing shit,
and that was in their longer shows because they actually got cut to 60 minutes.
Yes.
So that was in the longer form show, which I think they actually did away with that. Ed Newman is a long guy, like
serious guy.
Started off in newspaper in the 40s.
Yeah.
And then, of course, segued into radio in the late 40s, which radio, that's where a lot of these guys are getting their early humor, too. Even David Letterman attributes some radio to his, to his upcoming.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when you think about some of that weird radio that was going on back then, again, it was just media in general. People were trying to figure out what to do with it.
Yeah.
How to be funny.
Absolutely.
How to entertain. But the daytime show, again, it is very much a template for what he would go on to do. And
you know what the NBC executives wanted to call his show?
What's that?
They wanted to call it "Leave It to Dave," which Dave himself said that is a disaster from word number one. He said that is a disaster from word number one, and he said that the set was it was like a throne of pyramids.
Yeah,
and it had like shag carpet walls, and he said that it looked like an old Egyptian theme sale at a carpeteria. And it was a travesty.
It could have
been bad.
Name.
Could have been bad. Yeah. Imagine if it was named "Leave It to Dave" instead of the Dave Letterman show.
The show was not terrible, but you feel so uncomfortable watching it because, again, like I said, the audience is just not the audience for it.
It's not.
It's not the time slot. It's not anything. I think at one point you and I talked about how they would break and give the weather. Also,
yeah, they would do weather. They would do news. Yeah, they added all that in there. Yeah, they added all of that.
Such a weird. Just imagine, like, if you put it in today's zeitgeist or whatever. If you're watching Oprah and she's interviewing Tom Cruise, and just about the time he jumps up on the couch and starts screaming about how much he loves life or whatever, they go, and now the news.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just all the flow, everything
gone.
is just gone.
Yeah, it just interjects itself straight into it. Yeah, no, absolutely. But back to the foundational, what will be the foundation for the rest of his career?
Sure.
You get a lot of figures from this show.
Yeah.
That end up carrying on further on in life with him. Biff Henderson, who's a mainstay. 35 years with David Letterman. He started off on this show as David Letterman's stage manager.
That's fantastic.
And he was a stage manager for the rest of his career. And if you watch, of course, the David Letterman show at all later on when it was, the Tonight or the Late Show. He's Biff Henderson's.
Late night,
then
the Late Show,
and then the Late Show, and then Biff's through it all. He uses him, their friendship, you can tell that it's not just a working relationship. You can tell, through their interactions that the guys are definitely genuine.
That's kind of how
friends.
it felt with everybody that ends up on Late Night with David Letterman. It was, you could tell that all of them had relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they were friends first.
Well, there's some guys that, start their writing. Rich Hall, he starts his professional writing career on this show.
Rich Hall was a funny stand-up comedian,
hilarious.
too.
And that's where he starts. He starts his first professional writing job is with this David Letterman morning show.
And so one of the things I want us to commit to, there's two episodes I want us to commit to. And I think these are at least 2 episodes, right?
Yeah.
One is I want to just talk about Larry Bud Millman, because Larry Bud was the funniest thing I had ever seen on TV. Still one of the funniest things. Even when I watch at night, my wife has to tell me to turn it off because I'm shaking the bed because I'm laughing.
Laughing so hard. Yeah, absolutely.
And then Chris Elliott.
Okay.
Chris Elliott, to me, is one of the funniest guys ever, and it's because Chris Elliott has never taken anything or himself seriously ever. And Chris Elliott is one of my all-time favorites. There's 2 very big differences there. You have in Larry Bud Millman, you have the just the gullible idiot,
Yeah, absolutely.
But in Chris Elliott, you have almost the opposite of that, which is the I'm so smart, I'm smarter than everybody else, but he's really an idiot.
Yeah.
Those are 2 I really want us to commit to, because
we could do that.
God,
absolutely.
Those 2 guys.
Yeah, they're great. Absolutely.
Yeah, those are my favorite.
So the show, the cool thing about the show is you had a game show guy,
Yep.
Bob Stewart.
Mhm.
That was the named producer before the show ever aired. Well,
Okay.
4 days before the show airs, he leaves.
Oh.
And the controversy behind that is just creative differences. He's a veteran game show host in 1980,
Yeah.
probably made his career in the early 60s, late
Yeah,
50s
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
And his name's Bob Stewart. So he gets replaced by Barry Sands. And Barry Sands would then...
That's a name I know.
Yeah, Barry Sands. He actually... what happened with him is he produces the David Letterman show. He's with him for the entirety of this morning show, and then for about 5 years with late night. Well, 5 years into the late night is when Fox starts up their network. Fox wants somebody to produce a show for them.
Right.
For at the time, it was supposed to be Joan Rivers was the one that was going to get the show.
Yeah.
And
she ended up getting the show.
Yeah, she ended up getting the
Yeah.
show actually, and it ended up being awful, and that's why
it was rough.
And that's why that's why it's lost to the tombs of
Yeah.
YouTube.
Yeah.
And so Barry Sands actually went to Fox to go produce the Late Show for Joan Rivers.
Wow.
Whenever he left David Letterman, so he became the producer of the show, and then you even had people like Will Schreiner, who was a filmmaker and a comedian, and he's like historically intertwined in golden era of television through his parents.
One of the ones I watched that you sent me on this list, Will Schreiner came out for
absolutely
for the daytime show.
Yeah, that was actually the last episode that they did, which was really neat. On the last episode, we'll get to that in just a second. But you get these guys who are, like Will Schreiner, whose dad was ingrained in the early 50s TV. You know, his dad was an early 50s TV personality, and actually his dad's early show that he had was called Two for the Money, which, fun fact, Woody Allen was a young 17-year-old writing for Herb Schreiner. Will Schreiner's dad. So it's really cool to see, like, not just like the David Letterman side of everything, but it's cool to see how intertwined all of this early TV and how all intertwined all these guys were. Because you got to think, Will Schreiner, his dad's Herb Schreiner, a guy who was in TV in the 50s. You got to think he probably got to meet and see
everyone
and see all these crazy personalities from the 50s and 60s.
Watch it all start from the ground up.
And that is literally the ground up. And TV as we know it for America starts in the 50s. that early 50s.
Yeah.
After the war, we're doing great. Economy's booming.
Absolutely.
Everybody's buying TVs.
Yep.
Well, everybody's buying them, but now we got to create stuff for these people to watch on TV.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I wonder if there is and maybe somebody who's listening to this can find it, or I'm sure you will. I wonder if there is a TV comedy like family tree out there somewhere, where everybody came from. Like if you think of sports, you can always look at like one coach and they've coached up all these other guys and they've all gone out and they've got their own teams now and stuff like that. And that's kind of what it feels like with comedy here. That, you've got, I don't know who would be at the top of this thing other than maybe George Burns and his ilk.
Probably George Burns, Jack Benny, probably some of those guys.
All of those guys are the ones who planted the seed, and then I would love to see who worked on their shows and how they influenced and all that kind of stuff, because
yeah, absolutely.
It's huge.
I think it would be cool to do, as we evolve this David Letterman podcast, I think it would be cool to maybe do an episode for David Letterman and what blossomed from his show.
Yeah.
I think that would be neat to do.
That would be cool.
To see how many connections that we could make from what we know for comedy in the modern era.
Yeah, who did we get? When did we get them and all that kind of stuff? Yeah.
Because you could connect Colbert, Stewart, Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert. You could connect them. You pretty sure you connect them to David Letterman.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially Colbert. He got the show after.
Right. Yeah, there's tons of guys there's tons of people in general that came from that. When you think of like an Elaine Boozler and stuff, I just remember her being this huge comedian at the time. Like you're talking
Andy Kaufman. They actually had a relationship, her and Andy Kaufman.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah, they were live-in partners for, I think it was like 3 years.
That is so weird because I don't see her being with Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, I don't really see them two being together, but yeah, she...
I guess that's what does it though sometimes, it's like opposites attract kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or who the hell knows? I mean, Andy Kaufman might have been just a normal last guy.
Well, that's the thing. I think of Andy Kaufman. I think of him, he gets done with his bit and he goes home and he sits down on the couch and
reads
pulls
the paper
recliner,
and feeds the dog.
Reads the paper, feeds the dog, all that. Just a normal guy, takes the trash out, listens to the wife bitching.
But you and I have talked about this before, that I think somebody like Andy Kaufman and maybe even Letterman to a certain extent, you know, had they not had this outlet, they would have been like serial killers or something.
Oh,
you know?
absolutely.
I mean, because where does all that go?
And even David Letterman says Andy Kaufman, if he would not have been in a comedian, he said he would have been a serial killer. Yeah. And it's funny that you say that because that's exactly from David Letterman himself. He said that, Andy Kaufman, he said his style of humor, if he wouldn't have been a comedian, what would he have done?
Yeah, you got to think it would have been something weird.
Yeah, and it's not even
we would have learned
comedy.
his middle name. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
You
would have learned
Andy,
his middle
whoever
name.
Kaufman that killed 12.
Birth date, death date, all that. You would have known who he was specifically. The infamous Andy Kaufman. I think you could even still say that, the infamous Andy Kaufman.
Yeah. So this daytime show started in 1980, right?
Yep. Summer of 1980.
Summer of 1980,
summer program.
and it literally just lasted that summer.
So October 24th was actually the last air date. So it lasted a little bit into the fall, but pretty much through June, July, August, September, October. And there's not,
And it was a daily show, right?
Yeah, it was a daytime daily show, and he started getting dropped off by local local markets started dropping the show and dropping the show and dropping the show because who does it appeal to?
Yeah.
It appeals to 20-year-olds that are at
They were all
school or at
asleep.
work or drunk, passed out from the rager the night before.
Yeah.
And even Conan said, those early morning shows is where he first gets his experience with David Letterman and things like that. And it's just really interesting to see how foundational this show ends up being for the rest of his career. Like you said, it's the skeleton, the raw template for which he would paint the canvas of the last, the last 30 years of his career kind of thing, the next 30 years. And had he not had this show and he would have got that role in 1980 in the movie Airplane, would we know who David Letterman is as he is today? Probably. He might have not been the late night guy. He might have been the movie guy. And would he have been successful in movies?
I don't think so.
I don't think he would have been as successful with scripted comedy.
No.
And I know a lot of his jokes are scripted and things like that are written for him, but it's the delivery's not scripted.
Delivery's not scripted, and the reaction is not scripted.
Not scripted at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some of those jokes, from what I understand, a lot of the time he might not got to screen the joke that he's reading.
Yeah.
He's giving you the joke as he's seeing it.
Yeah.
And that's visceral. It's raw. You don't get that from scripted, comedy and movies.
I think, I guess that was, and this is something we'll talk about as we go on, but that was probably one of the other appeals for me with Letterman is that breaking the fourth wall kind of thing where, the jokes were written, but he would tell you about them and he would tell you why it didn't go well or whatever. You were part of the crew basically when you watched it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was an appeal to me as a youngster watching the show because it's depressing, but my first instance of David Letterman is the September 11th episode, the after September 11th episode, where he goes through and talks about the dark incident that just happened.
Right, sure.
And it's a super iconic moment for my generation too. The September 11th incident, it's really iconic. It's like the first major cataclysmic world event for being 10, 11 years old. Well, at this time, I'm starting to explore television on my own because at this point most of the television that I've watched up until about 10 or 11 has been sitting next to dad and mom on the couch.
Sure.
You're watching sitcoms, you know the 80s and 90s sitcoms, you're watching the news.
You're sucking in whatever's on.
Absolutely. Well, I got an odd fascination after September 11th happened with the news and watching TV period and just it got to where I was watching TV late at night, and I'm like, "Oh, well, wow, who are these people? Who's this guy?" Yeah. Well, the first show that I remember, I know I'd watched David Letterman before this point, but the first show that I remember is again the episode after 9/11, which.
He was one of the first ones to come back on.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only was one of the first ones to come back on, Al Franken himself, in the interview I listened to with Al Franken, said that he went to the 9/11 site.
Really?
And a lot of the workers, the firemen and the policemen, and they got to talking. He was having conversations with them, and he said that he had heard from a few of them. He said, David Letterman's got to come back.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we need David Letterman right now.
Yeah.
Like,
God, what a compliment, huh?
Yeah, imagine being that like iconic for a city.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Like Johnny Carson was for out west.
Yeah.
And then now you have him on the other coast, and he's just this.
It's hard for me to think about New York without Letterman. I can't.
To me, it's to not see the Letterman marquee in New York anymore. I mean, it has to be odd for any New Yorker. I feel like that was such such an icon. He really is for the city.
Well, Rusty, I think we have gotten through his early stuff. I think we've gotten through the daytime show.
We've ambled through it.
Yeah, we kind of ambled through it, and
We got there.
it's basically what this show is going to be, is us ambling and recalling as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of ambling.
I think we're going to try to do either episode by episode or groups of episodes or something like that as we go forward.
Or what we could do, something I was going to posit is there's huge clip videos of specific celebrity appearances.
Yeah, that'd be great too.
And I feel like what we should do is set up the most prolific people first, the people who had the most appearances first, and work our way down to
I think it's great.
More minor appearances.
I think it's great. I think I would love to do a recap of episode 1. Of Late Night with David Letterman, episode 1, because it is weird. It's an odd show.
Well, I'll be able to get into this more in the next episode, but if you watch the last episode of the David Letterman show and see how it ends, you have the showgirls,
the exact same
the
thing.
music, and the first second of the opening.
Yeah.
It's like they're in the studio, everybody's standing around the camera, the showgirls are there, the music's playing, so it's just like they shut the camera off for 2 seconds, and in 1983 they turned it back on, and everybody's standing where they were standing for the David Letterman show.
Yeah,
and that's beautiful to me. I feel like on brand with David Letterman and intentional. I didn't see that as something that was unintentional. It was
I think it's
super intentional.
1,000% intentional. Yeah, I think that no matter what you think of Letterman, when you look at his stuff, you can't think that some of this stuff, he just makes it look so easy, but it is all intentional.
Yeah, it is all intentional. And that's his humor it is unintentionally to you, to the viewer, to the person enjoying it. It doesn't seem intentional. It doesn't seem with any deliberation or any forethought or anything. It's just like your dad firing jokes and just hoping one of them hits.
That's right. That's right.
Throws 100 of them at you with the hope that you'll laugh at one
Here's
of them.
100 of them. You've heard 50 of them before.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe one of them will stick.
That's right. Okay. Well, I want to say thank you to anybody who's listening. Thanks for sticking with this.
Tell your grandkids hi for us.
Tell your grandkids hi, or your worker, whoever helps you change your diapers at this point. We're going to go forward with this because to me this is kind of a passion project. It's David Letterman has been a huge icon in my life, almost my entire life. And when I thought about doing a show, this was the first thing that came to mind. I was like, if I was going to do anything that recaps how my life was influenced by TV, it would be Letterman. And so that's what we're going with.
Well, I appreciate you allowing me, a random guy from the internet, to partake. It's been great getting to discuss this, and then all the discussions we've had prior to this too. So,
dude,
I'm glad we finally got to start it.
Your research is crazy, and it's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, it's just it comes from just wanting to do good, wanting to give somebody something that's worthwhile. Because if I came in here and I didn't do this, and we were just talking, I would have had nothing to talk about. Dave.
You gave 135%.
Or Mike, sorry, I would have had nothing to talk about, Mike.
What'd you call me?
I called you Dave.
Oh,
we're
great.
talking about
That's
David
a compliment.
Letterman. There you go.
Yeah, appreciate it.
But
I got a cousin named Dave.
We all do.
Nobody gives a crap.
I think everybody's got a cousin named Dave. I know a few guys named Dave.
All right. Well, guys, join us next time for Wake the Kids, Phone the Neighbors. We're going to talk about more Letterman. I believe that next episode is going to be episode 1. We'll just kind of go over that, and then we'll start hunting and picking and figuring out what makes us laugh.
Absolutely.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Wake the Kids, Phone the Neighbors. I am Mike.
And I'm Rusty.
And join us next time for another episode of The Man from the City So Nice They Named It Twice.
Wake the Kids at roguemedianetwork.com.
Excellent. And we will see you next time.
At the David Letterman Tribute Podcast.
Okay, good enough.
Ladies and gentlemen, Wake the Kids, Phone the Neighbors.
RogueMediaNetwork.com.